Hi coffee beans! How's it brewing? Today I am unboxing a Craft Kitsune box, which I have not unboxed in a really long time, and this one is the ocean themed box from August. Oh my gosh, look at this insert! Now, I haven't seen anything from this. I've seen just a couple things from Liz's video on YouTube, but not enough to get full spoilers, just enough to kind of get an idea of what kind of pieces I can make. I love this artwork so much. It's so relaxing. Oh, okay, and of course she always gives us full instructions on how to use everything in the box. All right, so we got some sand, which is awesome because I don't have any sand, and truthfully, I didn't think sand came in this box, so I went out and bought my own sand. But I'm really happy that she included this. There is also some UV resin and glow-in-the-dark pigment. It says jade white to glow? What? Jade white to glow? What does that mean? Oh man, I'm really gonna have to mix this up a lot, shake it a lot to get it to mix in. This is another thing I didn't know was included, is a little silicone cylinder so that we can make a little aquarium for our fish. Oh my gosh, this is absolutely tiny. Holy moly. This is all sculpted and 3D printed by Liz herself, the owner of Craft Kitsune, and it is a little starfish, some coral, some sea turtle, and I think an octopus to build our little aquarium with. And lastly, we got these really pretty iridescent powders. Oh my gosh, they're absolutely gorgeous, and I love that they're like a pastel. I think I may make a little aquarium in this little cylinder because I think that would be really cool and really neat to set on a table. So let's get started. The first thing I need to do is make the sandy base. Now, I am going to be working with resin, which means I need to wear my gloves and mask. And I will put a link to everything I wear down below because you always need to make sure you wear the proper safety equipment. Now, I'm using a new type of epoxy resin from Amazon. It was a pretty cheap brand and it's called Janchun, and I do not recommend it. So I'll have a link down below to the usual epoxy resin I use, which is Envirotex Light. Don't use Janchun. The consistency of the Janchun resin was fine, it's just that in the end it gave me a lot of bubbles despite using a heat gun, so that kind of bummed me out. So I mixed together about 20 milliliters of the epoxy resin and a lot of the included sand. I just really wanted to make sure that the consistency was really sandy, muddy, thick, I'm not sure. I just knew that the sand would settle and the resin could potentially kind of sit at the top, so then there would be the sand and then like a thin layer of clear resin, and I didn't want that to happen. So I made sure to really add a lot of sand. I poured that mixture into the included cylinder mold, but I had some leftovers. So I poured the rest into some of my silicone ice cube trays, which is a heart shape and a star shape, because I think this might turn out pretty cute as a little heart and star shaped aquarium. So we'll see how that goes. While those are curing, I worked on the little sea critters. I used UV resin and I mixed it with the pearlescent mica powder that was included in the kit, and I love this mica powder. It's such a nice kind of pastel coloring but with a really pretty shimmer, so I just wish there was more included in these little tubs, but I really like this colorant. I decided to use this pigment powder for the UV resin instead of regular pigment dye because the dye would make it really hard for the UV resin to cure under UV light, but the pigment is still translucent enough to allow the UV light to cure it. That is definitely something to keep in mind when working with UV resin. These pastel mica powders paired with the white kind of clear mold and my light colored background gave my camera such trouble for adjusting to the light, so it's a little bit dark, but you'll be able to see the finished UV pieces in just a second. For the turtle, I mixed the blue and the yellow for a green shell and then cured that because it's a little bit of a deeper mold. Then I did the blue for the head and the flippers and cured that. For this last shape, I wasn't totally sure what it was, but I assumed it was a piece of coral. So I just poured in some of my different colors in layers to create kind of a rainbow or gradient effect. And I made sure to cure it between each layer because it is a deeper mold. Then I cured the entire thing under my UV light for several minutes, and I made sure to turn it as it was curing, and I even flipped it over to cure the bottom too. I just really wanted to make sure that UV light penetrated through the silicone mold and the coloring in the UV resin. I'm amazed at the detail in these little tiny sea creatures. I mean, even the little octopi have little fins on the side. The fish have little detailed fins and side fins, and the little starfish have little dots. I'm just really impressed. And they're so tiny. They're like the size of the tip of my finger. And I was right, this last one was a type of coral or like sea plant, but because I wasn't really that careful with filling it up, it got some air bubbles and kind of cured with some chunks missing, but I don't really mind so much. And I made a whole other batch more of these sea critters using epoxy resin, and I did that because I wanted to use some pigment dyes that are opaque, and that kind of gives it a nice bright, vibrant coloring. Once all of these were done, I used my Posca pens to color in some of the details, and I think the easiest way for me is to take some sticky tack onto a lid or a plastic cup and then stick the sea creature to that, and that way it's easier for me to hold it and maneuver it while I'm painting. For the two brain corals, I used the white Posca pen for the little crevices and then wiped away the extra paint with a wet paper towel. I used dark green for the turtle shells and used that same technique with the paper towel, and I used black for the little eyes. I love these little octopi, so I decided to make them ultra kawaii. So I made two little kawaii eyes and a little kawaii mouth, and then I took a toothpick while the black paint was still wet and dragged out the color a little bit to make little eyelashes. I kept the seahorses really simple and just did black eyes and white details. The blue tang I decided should probably look like a blue tang or Dory if you're more familiar with Finding Nemo. So I did the black details with yellow. For the green fish, which is also supposed to be the tang, I decided to just kind of go my own route and made it a little bit more fancy, I guess, and I used some hot pink and white details. The yellow fish is supposed to be a clownfish, but I decided to do white and black instead of the orange and black. And same with the pink clownfish, I decided to use pink and green, and now it kind of looks like a watermelon or a strawberry fish. The starfish I kept simple with some white dots. I did some dark green shadowing for the green coral and hot pink for the rainbow coral. Now that all of these are painted and dried, it's time to assemble them. So basically, I just went for height and filling in some empty spaces, and I attached everything with UV resin and I cured it as I attached it. Before I can add any of these to my little aquariums though, I need to coat them in UV resin. So I just painted on thin layers of UV resin and cured it under my UV light. That way I know the paint's not going to bleed into the epoxy resin when I pour it. Then I used super glue at the bottom of all of my pieces to attach them to their little aquariums. And I let that dry and set for about a half an hour to an hour. I just really wanted to make sure it was stuck. I mixed up my epoxy resin to pour into the aquariums, and I want it to look like water, not clear, so I added the tiniest trace of blue pigment dye. I poured this really slow into each of my little aquarium molds. I tried to get as many of the air bubbles out as I could with a toothpick, like from under the sea turtle, which was pretty tricky. And I even used my heat gun to try and pop some of the extra bubbles, which wasn't really that successful. I let these cure for 24 hours, and then it was finally time to demold them. I had some trouble getting my piece out of the cylinder mold because it was really tight, but I didn't want to rip my silicone mold, so I just took the flat end of a cocktail stick and very gently went around the edge to kind of loosen it up and break it free. I have heard of people using dish soap inside the little space between the silicone and the resin, so you could always try that too. As you can see, this resin left me with a lot of air bubbles. Now, they're not big air bubbles. There are some on the surface, but there's a lot of little tiny air bubbles all throughout the pieces, and I don't know, it kind of bums me out. It looks a little cloudy, but I guess it is realistic to the ocean. Maybe we can pretend those are like little particles of food for the animals to eat, like plankton. I'm not sure if the resin is to blame, or mixing with a wooden stick, or how I poured it, or just having so many pieces inside, but even the heat gun didn't help, so that kind of stinks. Overall though, I love these pieces. I think my favorite is the heart because I love these little octopi. They're so cute. They just look like they're living their best life in this little spot. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. They're so sweet. They look like they're sharing like a little gossip. They look like this is their place where they hang out away from all the other fish. They're so cute. And I really love the star and cylinder because of how full they look. These little molds were so small that adding the fish really filled up the space and kind of looks like an actual slice or cookie cutter of the ocean. It just looks like someone took a sliver of the ocean out to examine what the sea life looked like. I love it. I love that on the star, the sea turtle is kind of peeking out of the water a little bit. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Let me know in the comments below which of these is your favorite. And don't forget, if you love this box as much as I do and you love these items, then you can check out Craft Kitsune for yourself. I do have a discount link in the description below. If you like this video and you want to see more, then make sure you subscribe. You can click the little bell to get notified of when I post. I upload videos every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Love you a latte.